It's the cry of generation. It's a stirring in our soul. It's dreams still in focus. It's hope still whole. For children that are and those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. No more delays, denials can ignore our voices, nor suppress our choices. We come for all that God has gave, unashamed descendants of the indigenous immigrants and the once enslaved. For children that are and all those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. Liberation when we read, love when we lead, moving at the speed of student needs, pushing against the abundance of oppressive greed. For children that are and all those who will be, our destiny is justice for once, for all, forever. Let it be. Welcome to Justice Cast. Vernon Jones here with John Youngquist, Director on the DPS Board of Education at large, former principal of the East High School. Respect, right? John, good to see you, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate
good to be
you
here.
being here, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
You being here. We're going to get to a good conversation. A lot going on. We've been in this together for a while. I was thinking back to one of our first interactions was back in, I think, 2010, 2011. We were on a party bus together.
Sure. I remember.
Yeah,
yeah.
let's make sure we tell the whole story. Because, that's the clip that's going to get played. We were on a party bus together because at the time the district was having an attendance challenge,
right.
And the kids at East and the kids at Manual both won this attendance challenge, and John and I ended up on a party bus.
We did. We came together, rode around a little bit,
Yeah.
and that was kind of it.
That was kind of it. Like, you get to ride on a party bus, and that's
right.
how it ended, right? So we've been in this a while. We've known each other. We've worked together, and known that you are committed to students, committed to families. Started as an educator yourself, and started as a student in DPS, right?
That's
and
right.
then became an educator, and then school leader, became a central office administrator in both Denver and Aurora. And now you do the crazy thing, and you just want to do all the roles.
That's right.
And now you became a director on the school board. So, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. Yeah. I mean, I have two daughters that have gone through DPS as well. One is done and off to college, and the other one is a senior, and we're experiencing that. Pretty exciting times in lots of ways.
Yeah.
For me, you see me riding my bike around town an awful lot, just because that's the kind of thing that I get to in the summertime. I'm lamenting the end of summer and the impending fall, not because I don't like pumpkin spice, but because I'm not going to ride my bike as much. Being on the board has been an experience. It's been the experience that I thought it would be in lots and lots of ways.
Yeah.
Found myself devoted to that interest about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Really did, I think, a thoughtful job, talked to a lot of people, had a lot of support from a lot of people in heading that direction.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, like taking my experience as a teacher, as a dean, as a counselor, as a principal, chief academic officer, and rolling them into a high level of motivation to make certain that our students in DPS are gaining all that they can from their experience as students, preparing them for the future, connecting them to the future in powerful ways. And I think, we're part of the way there.
Yeah.
And there's some growth, but we have a long way to go.
Yeah, part of the way. That's we'll get into that. But help me understand. You go, and I know this from running schools together. It is very different running a school compared to governing a district.
It is.
What is the biggest challenge that you've had with all that knowledge about running the day-to-day
Right.
to go into a role that is about kind of governing the one person who handles the day-to-day? What has been maybe some of the challenges or ahas that you might have had?
Yeah. No, I appreciate that question. One of the things that comes to mind for me all the time is a real sense of deep empathy for people, for teachers and for principals, for others working at school sites.
Yeah.
As the principal of a big high school, you feel the weight of that every day, and it was joyful to me to be able to lead in DPS, to lead in schools, but it also is a weight of responsibility for people's safety, for people's education, for people's futures that is really heavy.
Yeah.
There's a part of that carries forward in the board role, but it's not the day-to-day weight.
Yeah.
Right? The day-to-day weight carries urgency with it, which it would be helpful, I think, actually for us as board members to feel a little bit differently. But the role right now is a bigger picture role, listening to community, listening to students and staff to say, how are the policies that we have in play affecting you now? And I just came
Yeah.
from a meeting like that to say where we've been in regard to policy, how has that created our current reality?
Yeah.
Where do we need to be next?
I appreciate you saying urgency, like there's weight, because I agree with that. That's definitely a day-to-day weight when you're running a school. How do you then support a superintendent who is supporting principals, nearly 200, who carry that weight? So he's carrying the weight of running this district with principals who are carrying the weight. So how does a board effectively support their employee, the superintendent, as he carries that weight?
Yeah. I mean, one of the greatest challenges is that you're not a school leader or a superintendent making decisions on the day-to-day. You need to be acting and behaving as a team, which is difficult, right?
Yeah.
To be able to support with a level of clarity the work that needs to be done. Years ago in Denver and in the Aurora Public Schools, someone that informed our work was a man named Anthony Muhammad, and he had a lot of experience in terms of equity efforts in schools. And one of the things that he represented clearly was that so much of what we place on schools, including principals and superintendents, is accountability.
Yeah.
Right. And that is rarely matched with a level of support.
Yeah.
What we need to do is provide both high levels of accountability and support, and we need school and district leadership that are good with levels of accountability and levels of support, knowing that that's a part of the experience so that we can move forward together. So the challenge really is getting 7 people close enough to on board to have a message for our employee, the superintendent, to understand accountability matters.
Yeah.
And we're going to be there, and support matters as well, and we want to provide that as well.
Yeah, and we say here, you got to assess somebody's ableness. And then once ableness is clear and you've given them all of the supports, it's kind of like in teaching scaffolding, once we've scaffolded, once we've made clear that you're able to do it, then I can hold you accountable to it, right? The thing I tell people about a superintendent, though, is a superintendent is evaluated for his ableness in the interview process, right? So a board has to evaluate, is this person able to lead our district in the interview process? And so then once you say he or she is able, you hire them, and then accountability begins, right? We talked recently with some folks, with Dr. Olson, who was on last week, about the value of the superintendent evaluation, right? And how has that process been? Has it really enforced accountability, or where are we at?
Yeah. It's an interesting one to me. So coming in and seeing the process that we have and a product for the last couple of years that we have, there's not a conversation around accountability that's built into that. There's not a conversation around expectation that I think is thorough enough that is built into that. And I think that's something that the board right now is focused on and will continue to focus on in its next iteration. So
all 7 of you are focused on that, or is it being championed by a few?
Well, I think it's being championed by a majority of board members, right? And that's key and that's important. One of the things that is a challenge, a part of my background and experience was being the director of principal talent management, and that was for a time in DPS creating recruitment, interview systems and processes, support and development systems for developing leaders and principals.
Right.
And one of the key elements to that is understanding what are the skills that you're going to need to be successful. And as you mentioned, when you're interviewing for someone to come out in the door, do they meet a bar that says, I'm prepared, I'm ready, I am able to do this job, and so then let's get into accountability and support.
Yeah, the interview becomes critical because the people who are interviewing need to understand what is needed, right? If you're hiring at a school level, for the classroom, if you're hiring for the leader of that school, if you're hiring for the district, you got to have an idea of what is needed in that moment. And it can't be some political agenda or even some social agenda. You have to know what's going on in the district and what kind of leadership you need to move it from this to that, and to your point, in an urgent manner, right? You can't just, leadership decisions are not those that you make lightly, right? So you have to engage in those in a very clear way, in a very intentional way, because you got to say, hey, this leadership role matters, right? We've got so many schools in our district right now who are sitting with interim principals, right? Yeah. And that's hard, right? That's hard because it's like there's a lack of certainty there, there's a lack of direction there, and to your point about principal talent management, how are we, and I know this is a day-to-day thing, but even as a board, we've got to be concerned about the bench of leadership, right? We've seen this. We've seen great people retire in the classroom. We've seen great people retire from leading schools. How are we preparing people to lead our district at the school level? I mean,
but my job a number of years ago was to build that bench, right?
Yeah.
And so it was to have 28 people at least that were prepared to become a principal the next year, and I think that's become a challenge for us. I think that I don't see the systems that oftentimes an urban system needs to be able to develop and support people into that role and support people through that role and into the next experience at some point in time. You need kind of a beginning and through process that is ready and prepared for that. And so the definition of the role, the development toward that role, and the support, I'm not saying there aren't some systems, but an indicator, as you represented, I think there are 10 interim principals that are in play right now. And these are experienced people, but that effectively puts the community on hold for a year.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, appreciate when folks say experienced people, but what I'm concerned about is if we go back to the original argument that we need to make sure people are able, right? Just because you led in another place doesn't mean you can lead in this place, especially if you have no awareness of that community. You have no awareness of that school and what its needs are. I mean, you plop somebody in there. I mean, I knew that, and I know you probably had this too. We knew there were certain people that we called the closers. That if you got so and so to come and be the interim of your school, we knew that the district was not concerned about your school thriving. That person was a closer, and we have a lot of closers. I'm not going to mention them. We have a lot of closers right now who are interim principals, and it's hard for me as a community member, having seen the patterns, that hey, when this person goes there, that school is closing down, or that school is the district is not paying attention to that. So I'm concerned about that.
I mean that's a concern of mine too. I think that right now there's by policy we're not looking at closures in the immediate future. I volunteer in a school that has had 4 people in 3 years, right? And that gets a lot of problems with that. One is around school culture. One is around kind of getting into play the work and building momentum around the academic experience and growth of students in regard to the skills that they need. Another one is that you lose talent. Right? You lose teacher talent when that is the case. And so that's an area that we as a district, we need to be looking at, thinking about, and securing the kind of systems to get people ready and sustain them in that role.
Well, so speaking of that, you guys are getting ready to end, the district's getting ready to end the strategic roadmap. It's been a 4-year plan that the superintendent put out there. And it's 3 circles: the system experience, the student experience, and is that the staff experience or the people experience, right? When I see so much turnover and I see so many interim principals, if I'm on the board, I just have to question how well are we doing in some of those circles if we are not sustaining the best people. And so as I talk about superintendent evaluation, like with Dr. Olson, it's like, that to me has to be a conversation that rises to the top, right? You don't have to respond to that, but that's just my little soapbox right there. But.
So I think there's been conversation around whether there should be community input into superintendent's evaluation. I think that's a key, thought. And a part of what comes to mind for me is sort of the process that goes on when you're searching for a superintendent. What are the significant needs and interests that we have? If one of them is talent development for leadership, then really important and key. How does that evolve over the course of time? Maybe we do need to listen to community and listen to staff in regard to what are the needs that we have as we're moving forward. One of the is a public conversation about superintendent evaluation at the last board meeting. And one of the questions that I presented, which we need, I think, to continue to focus on, is does the board have a responsibility to suggest and even direct areas of development for a superintendent? I think that's key as a supervisor. Right now, that's not a role that the board plays or has played. One of the challenges that in any role that you have, and we've talked about this at a lot of schools that I've led at, what are you good at and what are you just not yet good at? And if you're hiding, and you're trying to hide what you're not yet good at, everybody knows you can't hide it, right? We even called it your second job. It's a lot of work to keep that second job going, keeping people thinking that you are able to do this when you can't. So we begin to move when everybody is able to say, here's what I believe I'm strong at.
Yeah.
Do you believe that? Like, do you see
Right.
it or
Right.
not?
Right.
And let me move forward. Here's what I believe I need to be able to do differently or better. Here are my areas in which to grow. What do you all think about that? Is that a fit with our community? And if so, then let's invest in that together.
Yeah.
Get better at the work together.
And that perspective is not an attack on a leader of color when you say, hey, I want to come alongside and I want to give you a full evaluation that looks at your strengths, but then also looks at the areas of development that we can support you in, that we should, as your board, support you in, right? I know there's been tension, and I don't know how much you can talk about, but I know there's been tension on the board. I don't know. They didn't officially censure you, did they?
No, there has not been an official.
I didn't know if you were allowed to
censure
speak
at any
on this podcast. No.
Yeah, I'm absolutely able to speak.
Yeah.
So there was 2 pages of accusations against me by the superintendent that he gave to the press prior to any conversation with me, prior to any kind of investigation relating to these accusations. Some of that, the best thing to do as a principal when I receive that kind of concern, my job is not to investigate. I find somebody that is their specialty. That's what they do. They come in, they listen to people, they try and gain a full understanding of, did something happen or did something not happen?
Right.
What am I hearing? What are the questions that I should ask? And that's the process that's occurring right now. It's been since April. No one from the district has talked to me about the accusations.
Yeah.
There's never been a conversation with the superintendent or I or anyone else. So we wait and we see. And these accusations relate to the ways in which I treat people.
Yeah.
And I have a 35-year kind of track record in the Denver Public Schools.
Yeah.
A part of what we're talking about is accountability.
Yeah.
Not high level or deep or scary accountabilities, but being able to ask the questions, how are we doing? How do we do better?
And let's be real.
Can be difficult.
Yeah, let's be real. I mean, there's a lot going on in our country right now. I think people can be reckless with their words, and there were just things that were thrown out there about you. John's a racist, right? And somebody who's known you for a while, somebody who's worked with you for a while, somebody who knows you to be great dad, great husband, great leader. That bothered me, right? To be transparent, and I said, John's a good-looking, tall, California-looking like guy, right? But I've never known John to be racist, right? And would you say John Youngquist is a racist?
I would not.
Exactly.
And the reasons behind that are that I have dived into learning from people and teaching with people in regard to race, in regard to race in the context of schools, in regard to diversity and equity and inclusion and the efforts that we put in play at school sites. Yeah. And the people that I have connected with and learned from over time, including Anthony Muhammad, including Peter Noguera pretty deeply in the Aurora Public Schools, and certainly including Ibram X. Kendi, when I engage and reflect on deeply and think about what does Ibram X. Kendi represent in regard to what racism is and what is anti-racism, I know that the actions that have taken over the course of time, not all of them successful in schools, right, over the course of decades, but have been focused on making a positive difference in the lives of Black students, Latina students, students of color, in important and powerful ways, in partnership with people of color that I've worked with over time. Right. And my experience has been one of needing to listen and understand, to be informed by, and to include our diversity of people in the work that we're doing to support our students.
Yeah. You and I have had, like we said, we've had a great relationship going on almost 20 years. Yeah. And we don't pull any punches, right? So that's why I can ask a question like that, because it's always been, what's up? Like, is this what it is? I mean, I remember back in when we were talking about achievement gaps at East back in there, and we had a very heated conversation about what are y'all doing over there, right? And what I appreciate about you, and I hope that the board as a whole and the district as a whole starts to talk about achievement again, right? I love that we're having this great brouhaha over green and growth, right? But when I look at data, look at data here. This was just looking at elementary schools in Southeast Denver, right? And I looked at the highest achieving elementary school in Southeast Denver has 86.7% kids proficient in reading, and it has 85.9% students proficient in math, right? Come on. Let's clap that out. I don't even say what school it is, but I clap that out. I'm excited That to me is the district that we should be, right? But even in Southeast Denver, when I look at that, the lowest performing school, and this is a mix of traditional schools, charter schools, and innovation schools. We didn't scrub that data and say this is just DPS traditional, because they're all the family of schools, right? The lowest performing school in Southeast Denver, 18.3% proficiency in reading and 10.9% proficiency in math, with gaps of 67.6 and 75% between the highest achieving school and the lowest achieving school in Southeast Denver. This ain't Northeast Denver yet. We're not talking about Southwest. This is Southeast Denver, where everything's supposed to be great, right?
Yeah.
How come we are not having these conversations openly and honestly with families about the achievement levels of students in schools, but we're trying to okey doke them with, hey, it's great.
Right. We're not an organization yet that is comfortable with acknowledging our faults, right? And what we have to be able to do is, again, say, not just as people, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm not yet good at. As an organization, as a school, this is what we're good at, and this is what we're not yet good at. This is what we're bad at, right? And then we create the urgency to make that shift. As a school leader, like, one of the things you do, right, is flip that. And we need to see this kind of a model of thinking, I think, at the district and in the community level. You flip it from it's not how we get students from 15% to 18% in regard to proficiency.
Right.
It's why is it that we don't have 85% of our students yet proficient? And you flip it further to say, if I'm going to take 15% of my students that are not meeting the expectation, why is it that we can't get that 15 there also, right? And who are those 15? Who am I going to count out that I don't believe can make it with the right kind of support that we put in play? Right. The definition of equity that I believe in says that every person gets what they need when they need it. And if I'm doing that in a school, in an elementary school,
and I ask them whom they need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let's take a look then at what is it that it would take to ensure that young person develops the skills and abilities that they need by what course of time.
That sounds like too much work. Let me tell you, we were at a recent board meeting in a certain part of town, and we were talking about raising this bar of achievement and expectations for students, and literally had a sitting group of educators say to us, that would be too much pressure. That would be too hard for us. And I don't know any other industry in the world where people are saying, hey, to be great, it's too hard, so we're going to settle for mediocrity. And it's very easy for privileged people to settle for mediocrity when they are not the ones who are suffering, right? They're already good. They've already got their degree, their advanced degree. They got I think this lady was driving an Audi. Life is good for them, and her comments in this were, she said mid-privileged. So that was the term she used, mid-privileged kids. I don't know what that means. But she was like, everything's fine. But I can't say everything's fine. I look at, this is Northeast Denver. Now we just talked about Southeast Denver. Northeast Denver, top school, 81.6% in reading, 74.9% in math. The lowest achieving school in Northeast Denver. Now this is beyond injustice to me. 7.5% proficiency in reading. And in math, 7.9% proficiency. And these are all CMAS scores. This is available on CDE's website. We just transposed it. That's a gap of 74% and 67%. I don't understand how we are satisfied. And to your point earlier, I don't know how we're not operating with a sense of urgency to do all of the work that we know we need to do in the short window that we have. Kids only get third grade once. They only get 3 years of middle school. They only get 4 years of high school. So you got to bring the intensity.
Right.
Why don't we do that, John?
So part of it is this. I think that the teacher response that you heard is one that I've heard over the course of time. And there have been moments when I've interacted with teachers that are like just, I can't do it on my own. You're right. I have apologized to teachers for years of people putting it on them with a level of accountability without that level of support that we're talking about. If I can approach the conversation as unacceptable, and I believe our superintendent says that is unacceptable.
Yes.
And we've got to move from this in significant ways. If we're going to do that urgently, we have to pair that idea of where do we need to go and how is it, teacher, principal, community, are we supporting you to be able to get there? What does it mean? Like, what does that student need? What would they actually need?
Yeah.
If I'm a student in Denver who has special needs, I'm not likely at all to be performing at a met expectations level over the course of my 12 years in DPS.
Right.
It doesn't mean that that can't or shouldn't be happening. But we've then got to break it down. What is the special need? What is the resource? Is that being provided? What's the different investment that we need to be able to make for every single student? And that can be done. It can't be done by looking from a board or a superintendent or a district level.
Yeah.
It has to be done by a board or specifically superintendent and staff that are willing and interested in going in and listening deeply to teachers to say, what might it take? And looking out at research bases in other schools and cities' experiences to say, what is it that we can draw in, not because you're incapable, teacher, but because we haven't yet provided the kind of support for you and that young person to make a move.
Someone said to me at this same meeting, like, hey, they're doing great things for black kids in Mississippi, right? And I said, yeah, well, majority of their districts, black kids. I think nearly 80% of the district is black kids. So it's forced, really. It's not saying that they don't want to do, but it's really forced. If they don't do well by the majority of the students in their district is going to suffer. So Mississippi has set its sights on, we have to serve the students that are in front of us. What I worry about is that students that are not in the majority, right, either that be that ethnic majority or even in the social majority that folks say, I worry that we are not concerned about them because I heard other people say, hey, even if we fail black kids, we can still be a great district. Yeah. How can we say that?
So you can't. And the reality is that we have tried to, we've just recently in the last year, really, we've seen how we're representing effectiveness shift. Yeah. Right? And it's shifted toward, are we as good at serving black students as other lower performing cities across the country? Yeah. And that can't be our bar. No. Right? No. I don't appreciate the bar that a lot of people use that relates to how are our students doing in growth relative to other students like them across the state. Now, this is actually, just keep it here. Right. Like, how are they doing in growth? Are they developing the skills or not? And when we are acknowledging, you haven't gotten this data yet, but I bet it's in there, the median growth percentile, that just means if we're at a 50, that means we're just keeping up, or we're as far behind year over year as we always have been. Yeah. And we have to have a high expectation for the results. For that, we have to have a high expectation that we're providing the kind of support in ways that people feel that help that growth accelerate.
And so full circle, if this is a board who believes in achievement, then the board's evaluation of the superintendent should reflect that it's committed to achievement, right? And so as we start, even the board writing current new end statements, I want to share one more area that's very important to me that I think is telling of what is possible in the district, because I'm very much a believer that we can still do great things. I still think we have some great people on the ground. We definitely have great teachers. We definitely have great students. Definitely great families. I want to say, like, it requires all of us, right? We talk about the teacher being able. I think what teachers need to do as well, and what school leaders need to do as well, is to stop isolating themselves from community and thinking that education is not a communal experience, right? Especially in communities of color, where we have been surviving in this nation and thriving in this nation through the strength of our community, right? And so education cannot become this siloed experience, because that's anti our culture. Everything we do is communal. So I think schools, to be more effective, have to open up their doors to say, hey, we can't meet all of these needs, right? And I think that's to our detriment sometimes as a district. We try to meet everybody's needs when we're not equipped to do that, right? So this is a school, this is data, this is from Northwest Denver, that reaffirms to me that the gaps are still great, but that there's possibility. So the top school in Northwest Denver, 94% proficiency in reading and 92% proficiency in math. Holy moly, right? But then again, the lowest performing school in that district, 7.9% and 4.8%. So gaps of 86 and 87. Gaps are huge. But in that data there, it's telling me that there is some school, right? Their demographics are very slanted to white and privileged, to be transparent with, because I know that top school there. But within that environment, there's so much we can learn. Why are those kids thriving?
Yeah.
What are we doing for them, not just as a school, not just as a district, but what is the ecosystem around those kids that is not around those kids at that lowest performing school? And why don't we simply do what it takes to replicate, not the same, but to your point, the equitable representation of the good things that are working at that top school? Why do we not have that urgency to get that done?
Right. So I'm going to break it down like this a little bit. I believe that at the heart of the problem, and this is not on any teachers or principals. It's within their experience, right? And I'll share from my experience. The heart of the problem is a level of expectation that we have that isn't what it needs to be. A level of understanding what a third grader can do. I was an elementary principal for 10 years, and I was an elementary principal at Newland Elementary School in West Denver, Smedley in North Denver, and at Upper Blue Elementary School in Breckenridge. Right? And I went from West Denver, where our kids were growing and performing, and it was kind of like, hey, we're moving forward with the indicators that we have. All right, they look pretty good in some ways. Then I became the elementary principal at Upper Blue Elementary. Half the students were immigrant students from northern Mexico, working for Vail Associates. It was that kind of a community that we needed to bring people together to understand. But what I saw in my first few days as a principal in this different community, that third graders were capable of doing, like I had forgotten or really maybe never understood that third graders are capable of that level of work. And that changed my mind and my understanding of what it is we need to be doing, the expectation that we need to have for our students in our classrooms, right? For our teachers in regard to the support that we're providing so that they can engage that level of work and grow students to that space. I do think that we forget what it takes to understand what's happening at that higher performance school that you're noting is going there and seeing it. And looking at what the students are doing, and looking what the teacher is doing, and saying what is it that we can take
and seeing
home.
what the parents are doing,
seeing what the parents are doing,
support orgs around them are doing, and see what all of
we
it.
We have seen schools over the course of time, and this is a reality in some schools that feel like maybe it's easier without the parents really involved, right? Maybe it's if we just focus on the children. But it is not impactful to not have the parents and community involved in part of the experience. So it's a combination of an awful lot, right? And that's where you do need both experience and a focus on what is our collective work as a community that is super technical in regard to data and instruction and teaching and learning, and super focused on who we are as a community, who we need to build to become as a community, understanding the power of every individual that's walking in the door to be able to move this forward. One of the things that go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean, when we have young people or families that are not connected to the experience, when we have schools that are not reflective of the community that they serve, meaning that if the primary culture within this community is black culture, right, or Latina culture, how is that not just seen and understood at the school, but how is it integrated into the experience of students in the classroom? So not just that there is a level of comfort, but that the learning is designed for them toward a much higher expectation than sometimes we've had for our students.
We'll wrap with this stuff. Principal Kafele says this, and he's been all around the place, new from the East Coast, and he says we don't have an achievement gap. He speaks to what you just said. We have a belief gap. And if you believe in the kids in front of you, your expectations of those kids are here, and you teach the expectations. But if you have low belief, you teach to the low expectation, and that's what and I agree with him, that is what brown and black kids, poor kids are struggling with across this country, is that some kids sit in classrooms where, and it's not just the teacher, but just the system, the systemic belief in them is low. And so the resourcing of what they need is low. The supports, to your point, are low. But if we believed in every kid, if we believe that every school should be 95% or better we would staff it differently, we would fund it differently, we would have community partnerships differently, we would make sure the city is engaged, we would make sure the state is engaged, we would make sure we finally took care of Tabor, because we believe that every kid should be at this level. So I appreciate you being on the Justice Cast. I appreciate you as a friend, as a colleague who's been in this work, and somebody who I can always push and challenge, and you do the same with me. And let's keep pushing, because I think the district that we want to see and the reality we want to see in both Denver and Aurora, because we both have hearts in both places, I think it's possible. But to your point, we gotta have some urgency.
We can. Do we want to? Will we do the work to make it happen?
Yeah.
And I know we're devoted to it. Thank you.
That's right. Sweat on.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Justice Cast. If you are moved and inspired by what you heard this week, we need you to do justice by doing 3 things. Number 1, like and share this episode with your friends and family and network. Number 2, sign and share the Do Justice Pledge. And 3, join us for an upcoming Do Justice action. You can find those listed on our website at www.faithbridgeco.org. That's www.faithbridgeco.org. Remember, the world we believe for is possible. Do justice.